So we all know that Trump has a hard time making a coherent point. But he has been consistent about one issue. Watch.
There was no quid pro quo, and there was never any quid pro quo.
But there was no quid pro quo. But there was with Biden.
There was no quid pro quo at all. It was quid pro quo. Well, there was none.
Oh, God. Send him to a home already. But his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, did not get the memo. Watch this.
He also mentioned to me in the past the corruption related to the DNC server. Absolutely. No question about that. But that's it. And that's why we held up the money.
But to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happens as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy. And I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy.
We do it all the time. We do quid pro quo all the time.
Well, that's not news for Mick Mulvaney. We're not going to get over it. We're not going to get over it because it's illegal, because it's criminal, and because it's an impeachable offense. Because using foreign aid from the United States as leverage to get dirt on an opponent is a campaign finance violation, and it is illegal. So nobody, we ain't getting over it.
And it's $400 million of military aid. $400 million.
Well, Mulvaney tried to walk it back, saying there was no quid pro quo and blaming the media for misconstruing his statement. But you just heard him. You just heard him. I mean, I think he has just basically handed the impeachment over to the Democrats now. Yeah.
Really?
Well, it's getting us closer now.
I love John Carl. He is one of the best journalists. Just watching his face in that moment, I want to know what's going on in his brain, because he's like, is this happening?
Right. Did you see the guy behind him? Did you see the guy behind him and the woman next to him? Do we have like a screenshot of that? Do we by any chance?
It's Sonny's birthday. Get her the screenshot.
They were both like,
whatever.
But here's what I'd say. Shocked.
Look at them. Look at them.
John Carl, he does his job better.
Michael Kinsley, the writer, he said, a gaffe is when a politician tells the truth. That's exactly what happens.
Here's the thing, though. The people that are around the president right now, a lot of them are buffoons. They act like such idiots when they're talking. We haven't even talked on this show about it. Giuliani is now being investigated for criminal activity by the Southern District of New York.
Lock him up. By the way, lock him up.
But here's the thing. Giuliani
you notice
ran.
at the rallies that he's been throwing right now, Trump, nobody's saying lock her up anymore because all his people are being locked up.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, Rudy Giuliani used to run the Southern District of New York.
He's being investigated by his
place
office.
that he used to run in the 80s is now investigating him for criminal activity.
And he knows how good they are.
But Rudy Giuliani, I was horrified. Rudy Giuliani took one of those Ukrainian mafiosos to the estate funeral of George Herbert Walker Bush at the National Cathedral.
The guy who's been arrested.
I mean, you know, that's something he used to reserve for one of his future wives.
Yeah.
Certainly not for a mafioso.
I know.
But here's what I'd say, though. There's nothing new from what Mick Mulvaney said yesterday that wasn't already in the call.
Oh, no,
the transcript that
it's
we
in
read.
the call, but there was no explicit quid pro quo. Like, in other words, he didn't say, this is a quid pro quo. Yeah. So now he said it.
And Mick Mulvaney said that Trump, my interpretation is that Trump told him that. I mean, that was my interpretation of what he just said.
This is not going to be enough for Republicans in the Senate to go for impeachment. It's just not. There's a lot of smoke right now. You've got to have the fire. You have to have the moment where the president says, this was quid pro quo. This was me holding the money for this reason.
Quid pro quo.
I'm just telling you, that's
you don't even need explicit quid pro quo to impeach him.
But it's not only, listen, this was a gaffe by Mick Mulvaney, but we've also had hours and hours and hours of congressional testimony
over the past 2 weeks
by professional folks in the diplomatic corps who have been testifying